The Edo Tensei is arguably the most powerful jutsu in the Naruto series. It can bring back anyone from the dead, so long as you have a strand of DNA from that person, and also a sacrifice to create the Edo Tensei. These undead ninjas have infinite chakra and they cannot be destroyed by regular means, they simply regenerate. They are extremely powerful. But there's one thing very particular about the Edo Tensei. When you bring somebody back, this person returns with a form he or she had at the moment of their death. We can see that's the case with Hiruzen, for example. He returns as an old man because that's how he died against Orochimaru. We see that with Minato and Itachi. They were pretty young when they died and they returned the same way. Most of all, we see that with Nagato. Now, Nagato wasn't old when he died. He was 35, but he looked old because he performed the Rinnegan Tensei just before he passed. That jutsu took a lot out of him. He became this old man, frail, could barely walk, and then he died. That's the form Nagato returns in the Edo Tensei. He regains his peak form in the middle of a battle when he absorbs Beast Chakra, but he returns as an old decrepit man. But there's a catch. You know Madara Uchiha, the strongest Edo Tensei in the War Arc? He didn't die young. You may think he had because he lost the battle to Hashirama in the Valley of the End, but that was a ruse. He actually died very old after passing the mantle of Madara Uchiha down to Obito. And yet his Edo Tensei form is young. The guy looks pretty fresh, which contradicts what I've been saying the entire video so far. What gives? Why was Madara that much younger in the Edo Tensei form than when he died? This doesn't really add up, does it? The first thing we have to note is that the Edo Tensei form isn't exactly the alive form when the person just died. Because if that was the case, Itachi's Edo Tensei would have returned blind. When Itachi died after fighting Sasuke, his Sharingan had lost its light completely. He was absolutely blind. And yet, when he returns as an Edo Tensei, he is able to cast all sorts of jutsus with his Mangekyo. There's no issue there. And sure, he loses the light again in one of his Mangekyo Sharingan because he casts Izanagi with it, but that's another story entirely. The Edo Tensei itself had perfectly functional Mangekyo Sharingan, so you may say that maybe the Edo Tensei form simply regenerates your body to its peak condition, but that's not really the case either, because the third Raikage returns with his scar, the wound he got when he fought against the Eight Tails. Naturally, this isn't nearly as debilitating as being blind for Itachi's case if he returned blind in the Edo Tensei form, but it is still not how the original body was. And you can argue it's the same thing for the eyes. Itachi died with blind eyes. This begs the question, what if Danzo was brought back via Edo Tensei? Would he return with every single Sharingan as if they never used Izanagi before? That's an interesting question that I can dive deeper in another video. Now maybe you could say Itachi returned with those eyes because the Edo Tensei can regenerate everything, therefore it regenerates Itachi's eyesight, but that wasn't really a physical issue with Itachi's body. The problem was that he used his Sharingan too much, and that spent its light. That's how the Mangekyo works. And it even happens when Itachi is an Edo Tensei with Izanagi anyway. The only other feasible explanation is that wounds that you sustain just prior to your death are not really counted for the Edo Tensei. However, the state your body is, aka your age or apparent age in Nagato's case, is. So that's why Nagato returned as an old man and Itachi retained his Sharingan. Now, of course, Itachi had the Sharingan because out of universe, it would be a complete bum if Itachi didn't have his Mangekyo when he came back. It would be kind of pointless, really. One of the most popular characters not having his signature jutsu, everyone would hate that, but that doesn't explain Madara Uchiha. He was old, he didn't have his eyes when he died either. He gave them to Nagato, so in theory, if we are following Itachi's rule for the Edo Tensei, Madara should be an old man with two Rinnegan when he was brought back. But clearly he wasn't. He had the Rinnegan, but he was young. And there's a very interesting explanation as to why. Before I explain it though, I would like to talk to you about today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Today's day and age, everything is connected online and you want to be safe while you surf the web. A VPN keeps you safe and private while you browse through the internet and do stuff online. It lets you essentially travel around the world with the VPN. You can change your IP address and bam, you are in practically any country you want online. With Surfshark, you can get amazing deals and different websites from other countries where you don't have access in your own country, for example. You can also access different streaming platforms that you may not have access in your country, or maybe even different shows that are not available in your country. Try Netflix Japan. There are a billion different animes that are not available anywhere else because it's Japan. They're gonna have a lot of anime. And do you ever feel sketchy whenever you're using a public Wi-Fi and you're not sure if it's safe? Well, if you have Surfshark VPN on your phone or laptop, you don't have to worry because they're gonna make sure you're safe by encrypting your data so that you don't have anything leaked. So make sure to click the link in the description below and use the promo code DaigoNight for 83% off and 3 extra months for free of Surfshark VPN. 83%! That's a lot! Now let's go back to the video. Remember when Kabuto appeared to Obito before the war started and showed him every Edo Tensei he had, or at least the most powerful ones? He showed Madara as well. We have to understand that Madara isn't like the other Edo Tenseis Kabuto had at his disposal. He even made that point to Obito saying, I have this thing here, I think you're gonna want to join me or I'm gonna bust you, man, because this thing is just way too powerful. And that was able to convince Obito to say, yeah, Kabuto, sure, you have Madara, I can't do much, just join me and whatever. Madara is so special that Kabuto doesn't really use him up until later in the war. I mean, in theory, he could have summoned Madara in the very beginning. You could even argue that it would have been very advantageous for them to do so, but anyway, he doesn't do that. Probably because Obito told him not to. He was not very pleased when he found out Madara was brought back into the battlefield. But to enter the Edo Tensei age question, we have to go to the very first Madara Uchiha appearance on screen, at least not in a flashback, which is when he appears to the 4th Battalion of the Shinobi Alliance. One of the coolest fights in the anime, and one of the coldest moments in the entire story. Madara and Kabuto have a pretty lengthy conversation during that fight, and in that conversation, Kabuto reveals he has learned a lot about Madara, studying everything he could with Orochimaru, trying to decipher the Uchiha Stone Tablet. But in that conversation, Kabuto also reveals that Madara's Edo Tensei is special. And that's something a lot of people miss. I think it's because so much spectacle is happening during that fight. Madara's taking on an entire platoon of ninjas, casting these massive fire-style jutsus and then tossing 2 meteors, that their conversation gets kinda lost in the middle of things. Kabuto has modified Madara's Edo Tensei. Madara is beyond his peak, according to Kabuto. Now, this is very debatable because that's not really implied to be the case when Hashirama returns, and then when Madara is revived by Rinnegan Tensei, Hashirama says Madara is returning to his former strength, meaning that his alive version was more powerful than the Edo Tensei version that was fighting Hashirama. That revived version of Madara Hashirama was referring to was blind. He didn't have his eyes, he didn't have the Rinnegan. So maybe Kabuto's statement that Madara was beyond his peak when he was brought back via Edo Tensei is kinda misinformed because Kabuto is really cocky and he's gonna think like he created a god. Kabuto even says that he has created this power that is a glimpse of the Sage of Six Paths, and Madara corrects him saying that he has created nothing. Madara is the one who did that, but Kabuto did change Madara's Edo Tensei, starting by implanting a whole lot of Hashirama cells in him. So much so that Madara has an entire Hashirama face on his chest. Now, Madara did implant some of Hashirama's flesh into his chest, but it's safe to assume that Kabuto increased that amount. And another modification Kabuto did was to make Madara young. That's the most important point of Kabuto's modifications, because if Madara was an old man, he wouldn't be nearly as powerful in his Edo Tensei form. And that's mainly why Kabuto says, yeah, you are beyond your peak, man. And when he says that, he's probably referring that, well, he also has a lot of Hashirama cells and the Rinnegan, and when Madara was at his peak, when he was alive, he didn't have the Rinnegan, he only had an EMS. The Rinnegan would provide him a lot of additional strength and jutsu variety, so yeah, maybe that's what Kabuto was saying when he says he was beyond his peak. But the main part was that Kabuto made him younger. Now, how was the process of making Madara a younger version of himself with the Edo Tensei? There are a couple of options here. Maybe the Hashirama cells Kabuto implanted on him just turned him young again. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Or maybe, just like Nagato, he made Madara absorb some chakra to regain his youth. Now granted, Nagato wasn't old for real when that happened. Madara was, so maybe that's different. And also, Kabuto couldn't have awakened Madara for that, because Madara can absolutely resist the Edo Tensei control, and we see that during the 4th Great Ninja War. It's definitely the first time he was ever revived and regained consciousness after he died in his cave. When Kabuto brings him back to show him to Obito, that's really just a husk. He's not conscious. The only question is, why wouldn't Kabuto do the same modifications to other Edo Tensei, such as, and especially Nagato, because having a younger version of Nagato would be much more optimal than having the frail old man that was fighting against Naruto and B. Which probably means that the Hashirama cells did the trick, but we never see exactly how Kabuto does those modifications on Madara. If you have any theories, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and like this video to help me out against the YouTube algorithm. Watch this other video right here as well for more entertaining Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching.